What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I've got a doozy for you guys. This is going to be a fun video. I actually went out to Fiverr and hired 3 contractors to build a PC with a $700 budget and give me the best price to performance possible while also looking aesthetically pleasing as possible. Yes, that does maybe sound familiar because that's what we just did in my own guide here recently in the last month or so. So I wanted to see, can some Fiverr guys out there beat my stuff? So without further ado, we're gonna go take a look at that. But before we do, just a quick word from today's video sponsor. Let's go. Did you just finish building your brand new gaming PC? You've got Windows installed but not activated and you don't know where to go or what to do? Well, I've got you covered. Head on over to SCDKey.com. Link in the description below, an online marketplace that specializes in CD keys to activate Windows 10 and even 11, but also many other game titles and etc. What you want to do is select to purchase a Windows 10 or 11 product key, click buy now, and apply my promo code during checkout to take advantage of a 25% discount, bringing the total cost to activate your Windows install down under $15. Next, all you got to do is zip on over to Windows activation screen, click change product key, and just paste in the key received digitally upon purchase. Check through the next activation menu screens and you are done. Now you have a fully licensed and activated copy of Windows on your new system. That is it, guys, and it is as easy as that. Don't forget to use my promo code, link in the description below, to save you some money on your Windows activation. But for now, back to the video. Alrighty, guys, we've got the first Fiverr list up on my screen here. I've got the camera moved here closer so you guys can take a look at this and we can talk about what we're after. But what I basically was after was just contracting out 3 people at 3 different price points and seeing how close they can get to my build, seeing if maybe they made better decisions than I did and got better price to performance and aesthetics than I did with my build, or was it a complete waste of money and was the build awful that they put out in front of me. So let's take a look. We're going to start with a contractor that only charges $5 to build a PC part list for you. Alrighty, guys, so we've got the first list here up on our screen, and basically I'm just going to show you the first contractor that I went with, and this guy's name is Manos Jason YT. YT, I thought maybe YouTuber or a PC YouTuber, but he says he's been building PCs for over 10 years. The best in the Fiverr community. I've worked with customers all over the world, blah, blah, blah. Basically, you know, advertising himself as a great PC builder, and other things he offers is some standard package, which is basically just give you a budget lifetime support on any issue, which is interesting. So I guess you can reach out to him and you can usually get a revision, which I can submit if I didn't like what he gave me. And also he offers a premium package where you could get even on like a live call with them to actually, I guess, go part by part. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, so this guy has 273 positive reviews, 5-star. I was basically going for anyone who had a fair amount of reviews and also had some good reviews at that. I thought this guy was pretty good, and he's only charging $5. So let's go take a look at the order itself here, that what I went through in my process with dealing with this person. First, I'll do a details breakdown of the price that we ended up ultimately paying, because there's extra services charges that come along with Fiverr. So they give I think this is just a Fiverr thing, a service charge of $2.28, but as you can see, my subtotal before that was $5. And then there's a sales tax that's involved. I guess that varies, depending on your location or even your country. And then I threw a tip at all these guys. I gave them a $5 tip, and especially this guy, that's I guess a pretty decent tip if his service is only $5, and brought the total for this one in particular to $15.17. So not bad. All right, so the next thing in the order process, basically just got to fill out kind of a questionnaire of what you're after. I was pretty coy. I didn't want to give a lot away of having knowledge of PC building. I just kind of wanted a PC and I want it to run fast and look good. So that's kind of what I stuck to. So his first question, how much money are you willing to pay with or without taxes, blah, blah, blah. And I basically said $700 strict budget. Don't worry about taxes or shipping being factored in. I just want to spend $700 on the parts alone. So it seems like he understood that pretty well. We'll get to that in just a moment. What is the specific use case of the computer? And I just said gaming. But then lastly, also he has, are there any other specifics that are required for the build? And basically I just gave him a flat standard answer of what I was after. Lots of RGB lights that also perform as best as possible. I need Wi-Fi too. I already have a monitor. So basically I wanted to make sure that the PC build had plenty of performance as much as I could possibly get for $700. Looked really cool, had, you know, as many RGB lights as possible, and then I already had a monitor, but I also wanted to have Wi-Fi. So basically the reason I kind of put those requirements out there is because that's what we did with the $700 PC when we built it just a month ago. So I kind of wanted to keep to those standards. So then let's take a look at the activity log, where you can communicate with the seller, just like an open chat kind of forum thing. He quickly responded after I ordered the order and said, "Hello, Dan12GT. That's just a gamer tag that I use sometimes. Thank you for buying my gig. I'm Jason. I'm glad to help you today. I'll be looking at this order as quick as possible. Have a good day/night. I'm not sure how much RGB I'll be able to fit in this tight budget." I knew that was going to be hard, and as we noticed, it's kind of tough to get the aesthetics plus the performance. So anyway, he basically came back to me later that day, a little over about an hour and a half, to give me a parts list, which was great. And there we go. What we got here is the list. And he basically nailed it in terms of price. We are right at just about $700, $9 over $709. I'll give him some grace on that. I mean, it's kind of hard to land specifically on a budget. I've dealt with that plenty of times, as you guys know. First off, he's got us with a Ryzen 5 3600. So, I mean, a very solid gaming chip, 6 cores, 12 threads, turbo's up pretty good. This is a very good standard mid-range CPU that I would come to expect. So where that lands us is at $135 for the CPU. Okay, not bad. Next area here, we got the B550 Pro VDH Wi-Fi motherboard. So he made sure he stuck with the Wi-Fi. Pretty standard, looks like basic motherboard, but I don't see any particular issues with this motherboard at all. Actually, it looks like it has a couple extra little nice features to it. It's got some VRM cooling, heatsink over the M.2 slot. So pretty solid looking board. It's something I would definitely go with. However, I am a little concerned just because the price on this board is up there quite a bit, $120. You can definitely go find a B450 board that would be able to run a Ryzen 5 5600 just fine. That might be an area where some money can be saved to give me a little more of my RGB that I was looking for. But speaking of RGB, it looks like what the next part he has here is basically a standard G.Skill Trident Z RGB kit, DDR4 3200 megahertz. I'd say that's pretty fine for a Ryzen 5600. I would like to maybe see that around a 3600 speed, just because Ryzen is so dependent on memory speeds, and I don't think it would probably cost too much more to really go to 3600 from here. But this is a pretty good price for the memory, and it gives us a little bit of RGB that we're looking for. So that came in at $68 basically here. Next thing he's got here for storage, Silicon Power A60 1 terabyte. Oh, he gave me a 1 terabyte. I gave him a minimum requirement of 500 gigs, and I did that for every one of these. He went an extra step for me on that. It doesn't really seem to affect the budget actually too bad, considering it's only $55. Now we know, and I've advertised many times on my channel, we can get one of those 500 gig Team Group drives for about $20 less than this. So there's another area that can be pinched to get a little more price to performance. I mean, I'm not gonna really hard knock that. I like the fact that he's kind of being mindful of giving us some extra storage, because 500 gigs is good enough, but once you get 4, 5, 6 plus games installed on, I mean, I don't really play that many games at one time, but if you do get to that level, then you're going to probably start running out of space pretty quickly. All right, so the next thing I really want to have a good critique eye for is the GPU. So let's see what he went with. MSI Mech 6500 XT. So this isn't bad. If you got I mean, this would work, but I really wouldn't entertain going with this type of GPU unless I was on maybe like a $400 to $500 budget, where I'm willing to take the performance hit. Now, it's not going to affect PCIe Gen 4 too badly, but we know with these types of cards, if you scale down from there and you go into PCIe Gen 3 territory, very bad performance. So, and we went with a 6600, and where does this price come in? Now, it does come in quite a bit cheaper. The cheapest looks like on Newegg right now for $175 with a mail-in rebate of $15. That would bring it down to like $160. Now, I don't expect these guys to go scour the internet and find the best price performances possible. I mean, that's just going to take a lot of time, and this guy got to me within an hour and a half. But yeah, I much would have preferred at least a little more GPU, and that's where going with like a B450 motherboard and maybe a little bit less in storage would have opted us into the next tier of GPU to be able to have a much better gaming performance, because a 6500 XT gets blown away by the just a next tier up 6600. So anyway, let's take a look what we got here in terms of case. This is looking good. Actually, I like this case. It's a pretty good price too. Now this looks like a full mid-tower case, so we are using a micro ATX board. That's not a terrible thing, it works. I can see he was just after getting the RGB things I'm looking for, and he picked a good case. I like this case a lot, and I actually like that little strip of RGB that runs along the basement there. So it's kind of a little bit of an extra bit of RGB. The thing I don't like, and I try to sway away from these types of cases sometimes, is I don't know why a lot of manufacturers do this. They'll have like 3 RGB fans up front and then nothing in the rear. So no exhaust. I don't know. It would be really cool to see just one more fan there. Not a bad choice. Just probably something I would keep in my back pocket in terms of, okay, I might go with this case, but let's see what else is out there. Alrighty, and for the last part on the list, we've got the power supply. So this could be an interesting realm to look at in terms of these PC builders. We want obviously something that's reliable. We want something that is not a fire hazard, and we want to make sure that, you know, fits our budget. For the power supply, he's got the EVGA 600 watt BQ, which is a good power supply in terms of wattage. That means we've got somewhat of an upgrade path, plenty of wattage for this build. It's a bronze power supply and it's semi-modular, so that's cool for semi-modular. And coming in at, I think this one is $75. Let's just take a quick look too. I think this is a pretty trustworthy power supply, but I want to go take a look at the tier list here just to make sure. Okay, so looking like Supernova, BQ, it's probably here around the tier C list. This list has a 700 watt power supply, but I'd imagine that it's pretty much the same components. Let's just see what if the LTT list, the one I was using here is a different third-party list. Okay, yeah, so it's kind of, yeah, it's rated around a tier C power supply, so not anything to worry about. It's not something that there's been stay away from cautions about. Is it the best power supply ever? Absolutely not. I mean, you can spend a ton of money on that, but we don't have a ton of money to spend. But a tier C I would recommend, so I think we're fine. So all in all, guys, this guy's list comes in at $709. He did well with meeting the parts list in terms of budget. There's some areas that I would like to probably see changed. I think we got a lot more price to performance out of our build, a $700, but actually we came in like at like $640, $650 with just parts being factored in, just like in this list. And we have a much better performing PC as well. For $5 though, that's also what we got to consider here. For $5, gave him a tip and all the, you know, all the expenses and fees that come in with it. $15 total out of pocket. I'd say this is probably pretty okay. Now it does come with a revision, so maybe that's an area if I knew a lot about PC building, I'd be like, hey man, you know, can we get a better GPU? Then maybe go with something like that. But I'm not gonna knock this guy for that particular GPU choice. I mean, it does work, it falls within budget. There are some areas that can be kind of shifted around that would allow us to have as much RGB and having a much better performing system. Good job to this guy. Jason, I guess is his name. He met my requirements. I didn't make him revise the list. I just kind of gave him a flat budget range and told him to go with it. So let's move on to the next guy, which is going to be more expensive. I think I had to double check price, but we'll check out that one here next. All right, so for the next Fiverr contractor, we're only spending an additional $5 more. This guy charges $10 for a custom PC parts build. So let's see what he's got. And just right up here on the screen, I'll just show you what he's all about. His advertisement is, I will create a custom list of PC parts for your build. Service charge of $10. This guy, again, as I mentioned, I'm trying to find people that have really good reviews. This guy's got tons of 5 stars, tons of reviews in general, and basically, you know, maps out what his gig is all about. A professional video creator with a strong background in software engineering. With my skills and knowledge, you be sure that the service is done professionally and in short time possible. The parts will help build a computer, blah, blah, blah. Steps for completing the order, he just kind of, you know, maps that out for you. So, I mean, sounds pretty trustworthy, right? For $10, you know, not a huge amount of risk. So let's take a look at my order. All right, so he, like the other seller, got to me pretty quickly. I placed the order at on November 11th, 12:49, and I got a message the following day. Basically, he delivered me a list. There was no real interaction of anything, so that was pretty good. So right here, starting with the CPU, we've got an i3-12100F. Sounds a little familiar, right? So I can't knock that at all. That's what I went with in my build, and it does, as compared to the list that we got from the other builder, comes in about $20 cheaper in terms of a CPU that's actually going to perform on par or better. Next, for motherboard, you know, kept it cheap and simple. Now the interesting thing here is he found an ATX board, so like a full-size board, and we remember we did have a Wi-Fi requirement, so I'm kind of trying to see, like, is he including that in this board? I'm not seeing Wi-Fi. Let's just take a quick look at the details here. So that wasn't my requirement. Now that, let me double check, make sure I said that was my requirement. I was pretty sure that I did say that. Let's just make sure. Oh, well, that's where I screwed up. So apparently I forgot to tell them, give me some Wi-Fi. So that is something we're trying to stick to, because we are trying to stick to what our original $700 budget was. So I'm not gonna knock this guy for not giving me Wi-Fi. That's just a mistake I made, so oops. But anyway, for memory, we've got a Corsair Vengeance RGB, 16 gig, 2x8 gig, 3200 megahertz. I'd say pretty solid. A little pricey, $72, $73. I think you can go with some cheaper ones that we saw from the previous build guy. Now, here's one thing I find interesting what he did here, and I'm just noticing this because kind of doing this in the raw. He went with a 2.5 inch SSD for our storage, which I find very strange. Like, why did he go with this? It doesn't even really make any sense. That's kind of a knock. Like, again, this isn't to bash these people. It's more or less just kind of some fun, like seeing where other people's brains are with building PCs, and also maybe holding me accountable if maybe I didn't do my PC build right. So far, I don't like that. That's the one thing I don't like, because you can easily get a M.2 drive, NVMe, for more, less money and have much better performance. All right, so one thing I do like to see here next on the list is the video card. He went with the MSI Ventus RTX 3050. I like it for the fact that it's a way better GPU than that other build list that we went with from the previous contractor. However, this thing does command a price, and that's what we talked about in my $700 build guide. Was you can get basically what I call the NVIDIA tax, is where you can get a lesser performing card like a 3050 comparable to a RX 6600 for sometimes even more than what the 6600 costs. It doesn't make good price to performance sense. However, this is a good performing card, but you can get a little bit more for a little bit less. All right, so next for case here. Looks like he was keeping RGB in mind for me, and okay, cool. So we got the Montech X3 Mesh ATX mid tower case. One thing I am a little worried about with this case too is this really RGB, or is this, or I should say, is this really ARGB, or multiple RGB lights, addressable RGB, or is this RGB, or is this just, you know what I mean, just literally strictly three colors? It looks like it's possibly pink and blue and green or red or whatever, but because some case manufacturers do that, where they'll, oh, look at all these fans and it's got the rainbow look to it, but then basically it is only the rainbow color. So I'm curious, I want to check this case out, see if there's any reviews. Everybody seems to have the same colors going with it. Let me just double check, because usually Newegg does specify that. Okay, RGB lighting show, all 6 fans, fixed RGB lighting capable. You can turn the fan lighting on or off by simply pressing the LED button. The lighting is fixed. That's exactly what I thought was gonna happen. So these colors are exactly how it's going to always be. Your only addressability is on or off. So I don't like that. Especially like, what if, you know, I felt like blue for the day, or I felt like red. Well, you can't do that with this case. All right, moving on. We've got power supply as the last item on the list. Now, 500 watts for a 3050 is, I'd say, getting close. And I think it'll work. Don't necessarily quote me on that. I'd have to look up exactly the power draw requirements, but I would like to probably see like a 600 watt or maybe even a 700 watt power supply, just to be a little bit more comfortable and have some cushion of power. But this guy is also going with a BQ design power supply, 500 watt. And I think on the list there, yeah, we saw from LTT, it's a tier C power supply, so it's not anything that's going to cause a fire or explosion or anything like that, so it's fine. Yeah, so what would I change with this list? Obviously, the big thing being the storage. Like, you can easily get NVMe and for cheaper, so that would knock off $20 right away. And I think we could easily come in, even at the current price being $750, well under $700, as we know we can, because you guys have been through this with me, and go with like an RX model, 6600, possibly even a 6600 XT, which would be way outperforming that 3050. And lastly, that case, man, it's a gotcha thing. I don't like that manufacturers do that, because people who look at this probably think, oh, RGB, there we go, we're done. And that might have been what this seller was doing, but in return, it's fixed and it's all you get. So if you really want to really continue to use that case, but you want addressable RGB, you gotta scrap all the fans. So overall, I think comparably, although I didn't give the other person a rating, I'd say their rating would be like a B, and I'd say this is about a B too, just because there's some things here that I would want to fix. The guy did a good job. He delivered and delivered quickly. Not gonna, again, this isn't a series to knock these people. Look how terrible these Fiverr builders are. But, you know, some awareness too, because if you are considering employing somebody to do some parts picking for you, you know, these are the things to be looking out for. So all that said, let's get to our last contractor on Fiverr. They're our most expensive one. So are we going to get the best deals and price to performance as possible? Let's find out. All right, so with this last guy, actually, I'm going to take us over to the details section first, because him and I actually had a little bit of a back and forth, which is a good sign because he's really trying to work for you. At least that's what I took from that. But let's look at the details real quick, what I spent. So again, the base price of the parts list, $15, service and taxes and all that junk, you know, add on more costs. I gave him a $5 tip. So then our total cost is coming in at $26.58. So obviously a little bit more than even the last guy. All right, so then let's jump over to requirements. Now, this is what really blew me away about this guy. He was really trying to work for me, and this is his standard list of questions that he asked people in order to help them build PCs, and I was really taken away by that. So there's a lot here to cover, but basically he talks about things like how much storage, obviously, what's the PC used for, what type of monitors you're using, where do you live, so that way you can kind of help tailor the cost a little bit, and are you a beginner, and so all those things included. And he also did ask for Wi-Fi, which in this one, you know, had actual selectable drop down where I said I want motherboard Wi-Fi, so we made sure to include it in this one. I don't know why I forgot on the second one. I just wanted to cover that this guy was very specific on trying to map out the requirements for me as the customer, so that way he could deliver the best service to me. All right, so coming down to the activity log, I just kind of want to show you guys this. At first, I think this went into the weekend at this point, and I actually kind of lost track of keeping up, and he also was helpful in the fact that he, you know, kept an open dialogue with me and gave me a note that said he's going to start working on it. You're going to need more than 500 gigabytes, he said, to have games like Apex, Warzone, and others installed. I think he took that as I wanted to get all those installed, and I was just trying to give an idea of those are the titles I wanted to play. And I tried to let him know and said, hello, 500 gig I think would be good for me. I won't have all those games installed at the same time. And then he was also a little worried about my budget being $700. Secondly, can you confirm budget including tax? Again, I didn't really want to include that because it's kind of like a hard factor to include. I would have to like start like building my own list. I said, don't worry about tax. $700 is my total budget. I can understand that that will drive up the cost after the fact. And then he came back again and says, I was looking at your parts and prices and blah, blah, blah. I'm not in the US, but I understand tax works differently state to state. Can you confirm your budget? So he's really wanting me to up my budget so that way he doesn't blow past it, which is very commendable because I understand like, you know, this could be a negative thing if you know, I say here's budget and I'm expecting $700, but after shipping and tax I end up spending another $150 to $200. This guy sucks. No, I mean I was trying to play coy enough where I knew that the price would come up, but I wasn't trying to, you know, give it away that I knew that would happen. And so yeah, anyway, so I forgot going in the weekend to get back to him and said, oh sorry, you know, go ahead, raise the budget to $800 to cover anything taxes. And he said, okay, no problem, I'll get right to it. Perfect. So all that aside, he delivered after I responded to him just an hour or so later and gave me a parts list. So here, let's check it out. Okay, so this one is coming in higher than all the other ones, but remember, we gave him $800 at this point just so he could work with me here. I think, and also the reason for that, he's considering taxes and shipping, which I didn't want him to consider. I want him to just give me the base price. Let's just see what he gave us here. This is still pretty well within the range. We'll just say the $700 to $800 range. So this guy also coming in with a Ryzen 5 5600. Again, not a bad choice. Out of stock, I guess, currently at Amazon. Just noticed that. Our next best would be going to Newegg and spending $135 for that. Obviously, we have to go with a motherboard that supports that. He did go with a more expensive board. Again, this is something I said about the first one. We don't necessarily have to go with a board that's of the latest gen. You can go with a B450 and run a 5th gen or Ryzen 5000 series chip. And funny enough, this guy actually landed on the same exact board. So we know it's got Wi-Fi, we know we got all the things we need, right? So that MSI B550 board. So let's go back here, take a look at the RAM. Now this is an area where he did deliver a little better, I think, in terms of at least price to performance. He went with a 3600 megahertz CAS latency 16 memory, which I said in the first build, it would be nice to see that guy bump that up a little bit with the dependency of Ryzen needing just slightly faster RAM. So this is good on him for selecting this. It is obviously a little bit more expensive being a 3600 megahertz kit or mega transfers. All in all, good choice on that. So coming in here, he actually still went ahead and gave me a 1 terabyte drive for my storage. I told him I didn't really need it, 500 is fine, but he went with that, so like, okay. About $100 for a Western Digital. I think you can get cheaper 1 terabyte. I think the guy previously on the first list found one for like, was it 56, 60 bucks? So he's kind of buying me a more, or buying me, he's parting me out a more premium drive here, but at least it's, you know, NVMe as opposed to the second list. So that's an area I would definitely change. Like we're building a budget build. We don't need a super fancy drive. I don't know much about these drives, but this definitely does command quite a bit more price, and we only needed 500. So really, in all in all, we're spending about $60 to $70 here more than we really needed to. But again, you know, that's the back and forth between communicating with someone that you don't know on the internet over our chat service. I'm not going to give him a whole lot of guff about that. Now, here's where I like to see that this guy went and found a pretty much badass video card. He went out and found an MSI Mech 6650 XT for, if we look at this, take a look, for the same price, if not, I think better than that 3050 from that second list. So we're getting a much more powerful GPU, and obviously just a GPU that just annihilates that first list, but we're getting a much more powerful GPU for our money, and it comes in at a really good price. Big kudos to this guy on this one. He definitely covered that price to performance aspect very well. So let's take a look at what case that he chose here. And this one, looking pretty basic, a fractal design, Focus 2 RGB ATX mid-tower case. So what do we got here? I mean, it looks pretty basic. You know, we're not expecting a whole lot for our budget either. This looks to cover the RGB aspect that we're looking for in terms of getting, you know, some RGB flare going. We've got the RAM that offers a little more RGB as well. This isn't over the top. I mean, I said I wanted as much as possible. So, I mean, where could you really get a whole lot more other than adding some more fans, I guess? But let's take a look at this case. I'm I'm a little curious if we're running into the same issue where we got fixed RGB lighting because of the name here, RGB. So let's take a look here. I want to look at the Newegg listing. Let's see, does it say includes 2 140 millimeter aspect RGB fans? Okay, it says it has a built-in 8 RGB controller with RGB power LED. For the sake of this video, I mean, we can say that this is a trustworthy case. Maybe I need to pick one up and find out the true aspects of it, because if for 60 bucks, and if those fans are truly 8 RGB, that's a pretty solid pickup, and that's working good for our budget. So I'm not gonna fault this. I think that, yeah, this is probably good. All right, so all in all, again, let's take a quick look at the list. $780. So main takeaways from this list are, we definitely need to save some money. Basically, we can bring this budget straight back down to $700 if we just went with a 500 gig NVMe drive. All in all, I think this guy nailed it. You know, he was the most expensive, but you can see that through all of his detailed methodologies with all these questions and the good back and forth, this guy nailed it. Like, and I probably could have said, hey, can you just change this one thing about the NVMe drive and bring it down, and boom, we're set. And you could probably say that about those other guys. Like, hey, I realize you chose, you know, XYZ, and I don't like that. You know, I didn't give them, I just basically wanted them to give me a straight shot and see what happens. And I think all in all went pretty well. I'm gonna give this guy an A because he pretty much nailed it on everything that I needed. He just went above my budget a little bit in terms of, you know, the drive, and that's not a big deal. We can't really expect a whole lot more RGB things to happen when it comes to such a strict budget. Alrighty guys, so who won? Me or the Fiverr guys? Let me know what you think. And if you made it this far in the video, please do comment below what you think about the series. You think this was fun? I had a good time doing it, and I really approached this as blind as I possibly could, and I had a good time taking a look at these lists. There are definitely some good folks out there on Fiverr that are trying to help people out doing PC build services. I don't have any particular reason to knock any one of these guys, but thanks for tuning into this one. Be sure to check out this video right here. That is the video of my build guide, and let me know who won. Catch you later, guys.